Okay, now it's time for some fun. I've got this tip all cleaned up with iron and washed down with some MEK, got all the excess polytack off of it. False spar is all cleaned up. The leading edge is all glued down and cleaned up. Everything is just about as good as I'm going to make it. So now I get to shrink the fabric. Yeah, I've got this fairly tight on here, but you can see it's not tight enough to use to fly with or anything. So I've got an iron set to about 250 degrees, and we'll just start going over this fabric. Now this has already kind of been done here when we formed the fabric around this wingtip. Probably not going to get much here. Go over this leading edge. Go into this first bay here between the aileron rib and the outboard rib. Now I've got those two done, and we don't want to put asymmetrical pull on this fabric, so we'll come down here to this end of the wing and use iron down here. This one doesn't have anything on it to do much because it's all cut out for this fuel tank bay. I don't want to get it on the glued seams, so I don't want to pop those loose. So that leading edge smoothed out pretty good there. Come over here to the false spar, flap false spar. I don't know whether you can see that, how much I'll put that. I got a little spot weld of polytack here on this false spar to hold that fabric down when we were putting it on. Okay, that tightened up pretty nice there. Now we'll move down and do this next bay here between this fuel tank rib and the next rib down. So that's all open space there above the false spar now. We're right behind the fuel tank bay. That metal goes all the way up to the spar. I'm going to go ahead and run that over the false spar and up over this rib. Going to go over to the other side. And go ahead and do the leading edge. Now, because I'm going alternating from one side to the other, I can go ahead and do this third bay here. The first bay didn't do anything, because that was where the fuel tank is, and there's no fabric there, so that's not going to pull on it. Takes a little time over this leading edge. That aluminum underneath acts as a heat sink to keep that from heating up. Also got some polytack right there. Another spot weld I got to heat up so that shrink the fabric in it. Want to make sure every square inch gets heated up. I'll go ahead and come over to that trailing edge again. How nice and tight that is now. Tightening up the whole wing as it goes. So now I leave that one there, and I'll come back over here and start back here in this one. This one even getting hot? I'm not getting very hot. Oh, the plug came out, that's why. Okay, now it's warming up. Wondering why it wasn't shrinking the way I thought it should. Oh yeah, that's better. That's better. All right. Alright, that's tightening the way up the way it's supposed to now. I'm kind of worrying about that for a little bit there because it wasn't tightening up the way I thought it should. Iron didn't get plugged in or came unplugged there at the wall socket a little bit. It wasn't getting hot. So that looks a lot better. So now we'll go back down here and do this bay between the outboard aileron rib and the next inboard rib. Get down here along this false spar where I've got glue splooged up onto the top of it, where I had it in the spot welded in. Make sure you go over that rib. In the leading edge here, I've got glue put up on it. It's also got poly brush sprayed on it, so it's kind of, as it heats up, it kind of sticks to that. We got to get it warmed up enough that it releases from the poly brush, but I don't want to go over the glued section of the leading edge. Actually, at 250 degrees, it's not going to hurt anything. So that gives me the same number of bays as I've got on the inboard section, so I'll go ahead and come out and do another one here now. Here, this will take me up to the landing light. So this whole wing is already tightening up. You can see wrinkles in it now, but it drums when I touch it. So as I heat this fabric up, it's pulling it both ways. It doesn't matter how long I leave that iron on that fabric here, as long as I leave it on there long enough to get it heated up to 250 degrees. If it goes on there a little longer, it's not going to hurt anything because it's only going to heat it up. It's not going to shrink it anymore. It only heats up to that certain temperature. There's that one. Now we'll go back down here and do another bay on this one. How many did we do here? Bay next, the fuel tank bay, bay next to it, and I can tell that I did the next bay, because this bay's got wrinkles in the leading edge. Now let's get to the point where it can be hard to tell where I've gone over it, but when I come down here to this false bar, then I can tell, because there's wrinkles in it down here where it's attached to the spar with some of the spot glue. The wrinkles you didn't think was going to come out are now coming out beautifully. Go one more bay over. If my arms were 2 feet longer, I could do all this from one side almost. Got a big spot weld right here, so it's pretty wrinkly on this one. That's smoothed out pretty nice now. That looks really nice. Landing light bay there was the last one I did, or the one just outboard of the landing light. So now we'll do the one with the landing lights in. Again, I got it glued down right here on this trailing false spar. And I got a little wrinkle right there because of the spot weld. Hold it on there a little longer because it's on the aluminum and it takes a little bit for it to get out to warm up that fabric and melt that polytack underneath it. A little lump right there I didn't see before. That'll come out. Yeah, that wrinkle came out of there good. Well, a little bit more won't hurt there. So this is why we put the ribbon in there between these ribs. And that's to support the center of these ribs, keep them from going this way and this way when you start putting the tension on there from the fabric tightening up. So we've got a spot right here where the rivet on the top of that tie down that I added in there was. I should have put a chafing tape on that. I didn't realize that was going to stick up that high. We'll see if that tightens up some more when we finish tightening this up. And I've got a little knob right there sticking up, and that's a little dab of silicone I put in there to protect this nav light wire where it goes across that tie down. They recommend in the book take a pencil and mark these as you're doing them so you know which ones you've been done. I can see why you need to do that now. To get here towards the middle, it's easy to lose track of which ones you've done and which ones you haven't done. Or the last ones in here anyway. It's easy to go back over them, I guess, and do them over again. I'll just put an X on them this time. This gets shrunk down one more time. 350 degrees, that'll be the final shrink. That'll really tighten this up. And so you got a tenting right here over where this aileron pulley is, upper aileron pulley. We'll come back here in a little bit and just slice that real easily. Don't want to make a big hole in there. Of course, there will be a pretty good sized hole in there anyway because that aileron, the pulley goes right there. But don't want to make it any bigger than I have to, because as this fabric shrinks, those holes expand. The holes get bigger. Oh, damn it. Wasn't getting anything out of that. I pulled my cord apart again. Okay, so I've done this one. I think I've got that great big spot weld up there, and there's the polyfiber tag right there. So I've done these. So this is all done now. I get that leading edge of this one here. I'll unplug this iron. Go get that other iron and do that leading edge of that last section there. Yep, this is the last section. That one's got some wrinkles in it. Had some wrinkles in it. Now it doesn't have any wrinkles in it anymore. So this is not going to hurt it any to go over it again with the iron at the same temperature. Not going to shrink it anymore. I mean, it might, because it might be tightening up the spot that I missed. But otherwise, it's not going to change anything until I raise the temperature of the iron up. That's the first shrink, and that tightened that down quite a bit. It's amazing how tight that is now. See, I got it tented right there pretty good. Oh, it's smoothed out really nice. This leading edge, or this wingtip bow, smoothed out. There was a couple of spots in here that were kind of dipped down. I was kind of worrying about them because I might have stretched it a little bit when I was putting that fabric on there, but that looks pretty darn good. Anyway, this top side is shrunk down for the first shrink to 250 degrees. Now I've got to get some help, flip that wing over, do the bottom side at 250, and then the finished shrink is at 350. But that's a good start. That thing had looking more and more like a wing all the time. No more saggy bottoms. We shrunk down the top side of the wing at about 250 degrees, more or less, and got it tightened up. Then I had to wait until somebody come along to give me a hand flipping the wing over. And Mark came home from work and helped me flip this wing over, and then I kind of showed him how it worked to tighten the fabric up on there. And showed him, took the iron and started out down here on this end and showed him tightening this fabric up. And this really went well. I was, of course, afraid maybe that it wasn't going to go so well because I had some dips in here where I'd stretched the fabric when I pulled it around this wingtip bow. But everything came out, and it's pretty tight now. There's a little bit of a wrinkle right there, but that's not bad. So this initial tightening of just up to about 220, 250 degrees. Well, this is one of the reasons why we put the fabric in here, the ribbon in here to tie this down, is this outboard rib here now is pulled this way just a little bit. It just canted just a little bit that way. As we come down here, then it's flat, but in the middle. So it probably wouldn't have hurt to have this ribbon come out and tie onto the wingtip bow out here. But the rest of these are pretty straight. And that's why you put the ribbon in there like that. And to go from here down to the bottom of the next one is just to hold those straight when that fabric starts tightening up, because that's a lot of pull. We start on one end, and when this tightens up, the rest of this stays kind of loose, but it starts pulling the fabric this direction. So we start at this end on the wing tip and do that, and then we go down to that end down there on the butt, come back to this end, do a couple of bays between ribs, go down to that end, and that way it tries to keep the pull even on it to keep from twisting the wing. But as this fabric tightens, of course, it's going to be looser down here in the middle, and it tightens up here on the out end. Well, it's going to be pulling that direction, and as it tightens up, it's a chance of pulling these ribs off out of alignment. But they all look really good. So this thing is pretty tight right now, and that's just the first tightening. There were loose here on the leading edge where it come over. It's sagging there in a few spots and stuff. I didn't pull it tight, but I had it pulled pretty good. You don't want to pull it too tight, or when you start tightening it up, it's going to twist it up like a pretzel. But anyway, it's looking good all the way down here. And this is the fuel tank bay here. Like I said, that's just the initial tightening right there. And then it tented up on all these protrusions out of here. Like these are the attachments for the jury struts. And the fabric stood up over the top of those. So once I tightened it up to the initial tightening, or the first tightening, then I come along with a razor blade and just made a little notch in there and let that fabric pop down over that one, and that one over there too, same way. And same thing here on my strut attach fittings. Once I got the initial tightening done on this, and I come along and just made a careful slit. Now that makes a hole there, and as we tighten that up the next time with a higher temperature, that hole is going to expand and get bigger. But there's a shield that goes over this, or a doubler that goes over this, and then fabric goes over the top of that to help close that in. Well, you want to try to keep those as tight as possible when you make them. Well, got the one there on the rear spar too. And then here, this is where the new tie down goes right here. And that one, I slid it here and slid it here, so it slid down over the top of this. And I just made tight slits in there, so it slid down tight over that. But again, we'll have to put a doubler over that when we're done. And then here, you can just barely see, this is where the pitot tube mounts up to it. That doesn't protrude through at all. Getting ready now to do the second and final shrink on this. And I'm trying to get my irons calibrated, but you get a thermometer, industrial thermometer from Polyfiber, and I had one, but I lost it. It got broke or something. I can't find it. Anyway, I've got this industrial classroom thermometer here that I was using, but it only goes up to 230 degrees, and we want 300, 350 for our final stretch. So we just went down to the hardware store, and we found this candy thermometer, and it goes up to 350 degrees, actually goes up to 400 degrees. I don't know whether I can get that out of there or not, but it has such a large glass around it. It's meant to be dipped into food as it's being cooked, candy or something like that. And so it's isolated from that. And here's the bulb for it down here. And it is just big, so it's hard to fit under there. Right now I've got that sitting on some ceramic fabric there, and then I just put it on a piece of fabric because I've got this infrared thermometer, but it doesn't work on the metal. So here's a one iron. And if I line it up there where I get the two beads close together, it only says 123 degrees. And I know it's 200 and some degrees on there, but because of the reflection of the metal, you can't get an accurate setting. So I've got it sit right now on a piece of fabric, and that is regular aircraft fabric. When I pull that off there, if I hit it instantly with the infrared thermometer, I can get a reading off of that and tell what my iron is set to. And I had this calibrated at one time. You can see there the marks on it with a marking pencil, but I've got it set at 300 degrees now, or a little over 300 degrees, and that looks like about what it's setting at. I'll get this set up and figured out. I said 343, that's close enough. All right, let's start this then. We'll do my final shrink on the bottom side here, and we don't want to get onto the glued surfaces this time. This will pop the glue. I want to shrink that, but not on the seam where the two pieces go together. And we'll do this fairly slow so that it has time to heat that fabric up. I recommend making a mark on here so you know which ones you've done or where you've gone to. And I did that towards the middle when I was shrinking it the first time. I made an X on it. This time I'll make a check mark on it, and I'll set this over here and go down and do the other end. Okay, that's enough on this side. What are you doing? You get something else to eat now? Or are you ready to go out and catch another mouse? Huh? You just want some attention? Huh? Yeah? You want to go outside? You ready to go hunting again? Okay. Come on. There you go. There you go. You can go hunting again. Now, that thing is tight. There's no doubt about it that that's tight. You can see flex in it here as it bounces up and down on those ribs, and that's the reason we do rib lacing on there, tie the ribs down. But man, that thing is tight now. Oh, it's smooth. Whoa, that's pretty. Oh, that's pretty. Yeah, sirree. Well, now I got one of two choices. I can either go ahead and polybrush this side and then turn it over and heat shrink the other side and polybrush it, or I can go ahead and turn it over and heat shrink the other side and then start polybrushing after I get it all heat shrunk. But it's about 1:30 right now. It's getting kind of late, so I'm going to call it a night. Come back up tomorrow, and if I can get Mark before he leaves to go to work to help me flip this wing over, then I'll go ahead and tighten that other side. Yeah, that is beautiful. I'm in love with it. Looks good. This may be kind of OCD of me, and I'm not usually that picky, but the stamps here for the fabric to show that it's compliant are straight down both sides, both stamps. There's one here inside this front spar and one back side of the rear spar, and they're almost exactly perfectly lined up down here, that spar. And that doesn't make a bit of difference on there as far as the structure or anything else, and for far as aesthetics, because all that stuff is going to be covered up here and nobody will ever see it. You got polybrush to go on here, and then there's 3 cross coats of poly spray that get put on, and then the finish color on top of that. So like I said, nobody's ever going to see this the way it is now. Nobody's going to see like these ribbons where they go through here and they're tied off. The anti-chafe tape where it sticks through, all of that stuff is just going to disappear. So anyway, that is nice. I'm in love with it. That's the first time for me on a wing, and well, we'll see if we screw up the other side, but I'm saying that's pretty good for now. Yeah, that's pretty. There's no going around this wingtip bow. Like I said, I was kind of worried about this a little bit because there was a couple spots in here where I got it stretched when I shrank the fabric around this corner here, and that just come out just absolutely gorgeous. See what it looks like when we do the other side. All right, good night, everybody.